She knew she should have turned back the moment he said it, his voice low and stripped of humor, his eyes holding something that didn't ask for trust. He didn't flirt, didn't smile, didn't soften the warning. He just said he couldn't control himself around her. And for one brutal second she believed he meant violence. The road behind her was already buried under snow, her phone dead, the sky closing fast, and the only shelter for Miles was the cabin he lived in alone. She stepped inside anyway, and the door shut with a sound that felt final. The cabin was clean in a way that made her uneasy. Everything placed with purpose, nothing decorative, nothing soft except the thick blanket folded on a chair. He moved like a man used to being watched by nothing but trees. Heavy steps, controlled hands, shoulders tense as if holding himself back from something he didn't want to name. She told herself she was imagining the pressure in the air. The way he kept his distance like proximity was dangerous. Outside the storm rose fast, wind screaming against the logs, erasing any chance of leaving before morning. He lit a lantern and the glow carved sharp shadows across his face, scars she hadn't noticed before cutting through his beard and down his neck. She asked how he got them, and his jaw tightened as if she'd pressed on an old wound. He said the mountain teaches lessons hard, and some men don't learn gently. She tried to keep things normal, asking about coffee, about how long he'd lived there, about the trail she'd taken that was now gone. He answered in short, careful sentences, eyes flicking to her mouth and away again, fists clenching and unclenching at his sides. When she laughed nervously to fill the silence, the sound seemed too loud, too intimate in the small space. He turned his back to her, pouring hot water with deliberate slowness, and told her she should sleep as soon as possible. The way he said it made her heart race not with fear alone, but with something that made her angry at herself. She wasn't here for this. She wasn't supposed to feel anything except relief to be alive. She woke in the night to the sound of breathing that wasn't hers. Deep and controlled, closer than it should have been. She froze, staring into the dark, every muscle locked. He was standing near the window, not watching her but the storm. His hands braced on the sill like he was holding himself in place. He spoke without turning, telling her he hadn't slept in days, that he didn't mean what his body wanted when someone was near. She asked why he didn't leave, and he laughed quietly, a broken sound, saying the mountain didn't let him. She didn't know what that meant, only that the fear in her chest tangled with a pull she didn't want to examine. Morning didn't come clean. The storm lingered, heavy and white, trapping them together. They moved around each other carefully, two strangers circling an unspoken edge. She noticed how he watched her when he thought she wasn't looking. Not hungry, not cruel, but strained, like restraint was a physical act costing him pain. She confronted him finally, telling him she wasn't afraid of him, that whatever he thought he was, she could decide for herself. His response was immediate and sharp, telling her fear wasn't the problem, that desire was worse because it made people stupid. He told her the last woman who stayed in that cabin didn't leave the same, not because he hurt her, but because she'd wanted something he couldn't give without breaking them both. The confession cracked something open. She demanded to know what he meant, demanded truth. He told her about the years alone, about violence he'd survived, about instincts sharpened by isolation, about how closeness flipped a switch he'd spent years building walls around. He said he didn't trust himself not to cross lines once they blurred. She should have run when she heard that, but instead she felt the weight of his honesty, the way he hated what he was admitting. When she stepped closer, testing him, he backed away immediately, hands up, breath uneven, proving he was fighting himself, not her. The moment everything shifted was small and stupid. She slipped on the floor, twisted her ankle hard enough to cry out, and he was there instantly, catching her, hands firm and careful, eyes burning with panic. The contact was electric, dangerous. He froze, like letting go would be worse than holding on. She felt the truth of his warning in the tension of his body, in the way his jaw trembled as he forced himself to set her down gently. He told her again to stay away from him, and this time she heard the plea under the command. Hours stretched, pain and hunger and isolation stripped away pretense. They talked, really talked about things they'd never said aloud. She told him why she'd been on that road, what she was running from, and he listened like every word mattered. When she reached for him again, slower this time, asking permission with her eyes, he didn't touch her back. He told her no, voice rough, because yes would mean something he wasn't sure he could survive. The rejection hurt more than she expected, but it also scared her, because it proved he meant every word he'd said. The second night was worse. The storm howled, the cabin creaked, and the tension between them became unbearable. She woke to find him sitting on the floor across the room, back against the wall, like he'd chosen discomfort over temptation. The sight did something to her chest, something sharp and aching. She crossed the space and sat beside him, not touching, just there. He told her she was making it harder. She told him she wasn't leaving him alone with his monsters. When she finally rested her head on his shoulder, he shook, breath breaking, but he didn't move her away. By morning the storm broke. Silence replaced it, heavy and bright. I stood at the door telling her the path would be clear by noon, that he'd walk her to the trailhead and then she'd go back to her life. The finality in his voice scared her more than the storm had. She asked if that was what he wanted. He didn't answer, and that was answer enough. When she kissed him, quick and desperate, he went still, then pulled away. Pain etched across his face. He told her if she stayed one more second, he'd stop being careful. She left. Every step away felt wrong, like tearing something vital loose. She didn't look back. Afraid if she did, she'd run straight into his arms and never leave. The mountain swallowed the cabin from view, and with it something unfinished, something dangerous and alive. She told herself survival meant knowing when to walk away. She didn't know then that some warnings aren't meant to push you away forever, only to make sure you come back with open eyes. She thought the story ended there, a strange survival memory she'd carry quietly. But the mountain wasn't done, and neither was he. Weeks later, when normal life felt thin and wrong, she found herself watching the news about a search operation, gone bad in the same range. A local man injured while guiding a rescue. The name hit her like a blow. She didn't hesitate. She packed, drove, ignored every sensible voice telling her not to chase something that had scared her once already. When she reached the trailhead, the ranger recognized the concern in her face before she said his name, and told her he was alive, stubborn as ever, refusing evacuation until the others were safe. She found him in a medical tent, bruised and stitched, anger radiating off him even through painkillers. When he saw her, the anger collapsed into something raw and unguarded. He told her she shouldn't be there. She told him he didn't get to decide that alone. The silence between them was thick, loaded with everything they hadn't said. When the tent emptied, he admitted the truth he'd hidden before, that the warning wasn't about losing control in the way she'd feared, but about wanting too much, about the way isolation had made him cling hard and fast, about fear of hurting someone by needing them more than was fair. The honesty stripped away the last barrier. She told him she wasn't fragile, that wanting deeply wasn't a crime, that running from connection had almost killed her before she ever met him. He looked at her like she was a risk he was finally willing to take. Recovery was slow. She stayed nearby, helping, learning the rhythms of the mountain instead of fighting them. They set rules, boundaries spoken clearly, because they both knew unspoken tension was where things broke. The desire between them didn't vanish, but it transformed, sharpened by trust instead of fear. When she returned to the cabin with him for the first time after, it felt different, lighter, still dangerous but honest. He didn't warn her away this time. He asked if she was sure. She said yes without hesitation. What happened there wasn't sudden or wild or out of control. It was intense and grounding. Two people choosing each other with eyes open, aware of the risks and willing to carry them together. The mountain watched in silence, indifferent as it always was. They didn't pretend it would be easy. He still struggled with the habits solitude had carved into him. She still fought the urge to run when things felt too deep. But they faced it openly, calling each other out, pulling back when needed, stepping forward when it mattered. The warning he'd given her became something else, not a threat, but a reminder of how close desire and fear can live inside the same chest. Months later, when she stood on the porch looking out at the endless trees, she understood the truth that had shocked her the most. Control wasn't about suppression or isolation. It was about choice, about letting someone see the parts of you that scared you and trusting them not to use it against you. The mountain man who had warned her away didn't disappear. He learned how to stay. And the woman who walked into his cabin during a storm didn't survive by leaving anymore. She survived by deciding fully and without illusion to remain.